Hi guys, Ali Taylor here, and today I'm going to talk about the correct tee height you should be using to hit driver your maximum distance. So guys, tee height, this is something that most guys really neglect, and I think tee height becomes very reactive to shots they've hit rather than actually working out what is your best tee height, sticking with it, and then learning how you deliver the golf club to maximise your distance with driver, as well as keeping some good accuracy in there as well. So normally for me when I'm on the golf course, I use a wooden tee, and it just means I can push it up and down and change tee heights depending on the club I'm using. But today what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some preset tees, so different colours. I'm going to use red tee, white, pink and orange, just so it keeps it very consistent. We're going to see how far the ball goes. I'm expecting to swing at a pretty similar speed every time. I would say that in warm-up I've been a little bit slower than normal today. I did my first 10k run for a long time yesterday, and the body's not quite feeling as good as I was hoping it would do. It's not too bad, but I don't feel I can quite move as freely as normal, but it should be nice and consistent through the test, and then we'll get to see which tee height is correct for hitting the ball as far as possible with driver. Right then, to find the correct tee height, I'm going to use 4 different preset height tees. So coloured, they're red, white, pink and orange. Now on my mat, the little bit the tees go into is actually slightly raised anyway, so it will make the tee play a little bit higher than it would on the grass. And what we're going to look at is how far these shots are going with the different tee heights, and not just how it affects strike and whereabouts on the club face I can hit the ball, but also maybe how I swing differently to deliver the club in a manner to maybe get the kind of strike I need to get the ball going as far as it can from that tee. So I'm going to start on red, then up onto white, pink and finally orange. Then we'll really dive into how the swings changed with the strike, but most importantly, like we said, which height tee is correct to get you maximising driver. So we're going to go red tee first off, and certainly when you put it down the club behind the ball only really sits in the middle of the club face, and I think it looks very difficult to try and get the middle of the club face on the golf ball unless I feel like I kind of hit down. I'm not consciously going to try and do anything different, but let's hit a few shots and see how we go from red. See from that last ball flight there, very low, kind of not the biggest carry, but really chasing out. So we're going to move now from red onto the white tee. As certainly as the white tee, the ball's much higher up and probably just not quite half the ball above the club head, but this is probably getting a little closer to the height I would normally tee it. So definitely overall there, kind of looked like the height of the shot was a little higher. Maybe going a little further through the air, but like I said, we're going to dive into the numbers in a while. But for now, that's white finished. Let's move up to pink. So now pink a little bit higher, and certainly now slightly more than half the ball above the club head. And I think this is the height, and maybe even the orange at higher, that golfers really worry about, because a lot of golfers, for me, get a lot of shots where they get right off the top of the club, it pops up in the air and goes nowhere. So what they tend to do is tee it down more and more to enable them to find closer to the middle of the club face rather than the top. But it can be quite negative to what it does to your drives. So let's go pink and see what we can do. Right, so those tee shots with the pink, for me, with the way the ball was flying on the simulator, it didn't look massively different to white. And to be fair, the height of the tee is very, very slightly different. But that moves me on to my final tee height, orange. Now, this, because it's even higher on my mat, looks very, very high. Now, almost the entire golf ball above the club head. So 4 shots. This is probably higher than I would ever normally hit, but let's hit some shots and see how the ball performs. So again, I would have said very, very slightly higher on ball flight, which I might expect. So let's run through the 4 different tee heights. Let's look at how far the ball was going initially, and then let's look at how, possibly, I might have delivered the club differently, good or bad, as to why which colour tee maximises how far I hit driver. Right, so we can see with orange tee, really good ball striking very near the middle of the club face. Club head speed 103, ball speed 153, carry 245, 273 total. And what it shows off the orange tee there is everything very, very optimal. Spin just optimal enough at 2.3, but everything else kind of very bottom end. And this is something I'm going to talk about shortly. And certainly that spin loft number on the left-hand side is very, very low. So we can see with pink tee, fairly centre strikes, just a little bit towards the heel, but club speed 103, ball speed 153, carry 240 and total 275. And again, we can see with the pink tee, very bottom end spin, actually launching a little bit low, spin loft down at 7.5, and the height of the shot, only 61 feet as an average, predominantly down to that low launch and slightly low spin. So white tee, fairly centred, just slightly high and slightly toe, which could be said is that ideal strike. Club speed 103, ball speed 151, carry 244 and total 272. So with the white tee, we saw 244 carry, 272. Ball speed was back just a tiny little bit, spin loft 11.1, spin at just under 2,200 and launch angle at 13.1. So we see with the red tee, the strike just very, very slightly low on the face. 104 club speed, ball speed 154, carry 232 and total 272. Now, even though the strike was a little bit low on the face, we would normally expect that to spin up a bit, but 1800 spin, very, very low launch, and that spin loft down at 9.1, but ball speed at 154. Right then guys, so for me the results were quite interesting there. That certainly the little red tee, you know, for me personally not comfortable with how the club looked behind the ball, and what we saw was that contact point was a little bit low on the club face. So it actually gave us a very, very low launch, but what it was doing is, because there's actually a little bit of curvature to the driver face, the loft that's on the bottom of the club should really be about the centre of the face. So any higher up the face tends to be more lofted, and any lower down the face tends to be less lofted. But also the way you deliver the club, so if you're hitting potentially down on the golf ball and you get forward shaft lean, you're de-lofting the club, and potentially as you're hitting more up on it, the shaft lean might be back. So there's lots of things can change because of that tee height. And what we saw generally with me there is my best spin loft actually came off the white tee. Now, I think it's important, spin loft can sound a very technical term. So if you imagine as the golf ball comes off the club face, we've got the club, the angle the club would be moving at would be the angle of attack, and we've got the dynamic loft off the club face. So basically all spin loft is the difference there, so that V that's getting formed. Now, as you tend to hit up and keep the loft off, that spin loft gets very low. So what we saw for me on some of them, I got that V too low, so there wasn't enough spin on the ball. Whereas what we saw with the white was I managed to get a good dynamic loft, I get a good angle of attack, so that little V, that spin loft V, was absolutely perfect for me. Now what I would say is the white tee on my mat, I mentioned before, it's just a little bit raised what I put the tees into. So the white tee I think plays a little bit closer to kind of orange. So it'll depend, and you might need to play around with it a little bit. It's tough for me in here because I can't quite get the tee down to the ground, and to be honest that's why I tend to use the wooden tees. But I know that that kind of, maybe about half the ball above the club head is good for me. As I tend to get the ball higher, I tend to hit up more and more, and certainly with my new way I'm delivering the golf club, keeping the loft off it a little bit, the more I hit up and keep the loft off, there's just not enough spin on the ball to get it going forward long enough in the air. So it can be a very, very fine balance about how you deliver the golf club, maybe how you deliver the club differently with the different tee heights. And what I would always say is, yes, you can get along and you can practice, but where you're striking the ball on the club face is huge for that as well. So there's a lot of information out there, and if you want to find out what is ultimately best for you, it might be a case of going and having a lesson with somebody or having a session on a launch monitor where you can get all that perfect feedback so that you understand when you do things correctly, you get the best results. For me, there's a lot of guys that come and see me initially are very hit and miss with tee height. They're not then understanding that maybe it's the strike that's affected how the ball's launched or spun, or that because of the tee height, they've delivered the club differently. But if you can be as consistent as possible with what you do from tee height to trying to swing the club as consistently as possible, if that's then maximised for your driver, that's going to help you hit the ball further and more accurately than ever before. So guys, hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, like and share it, comment below, and I'll get back to as many people as I can. If you've enjoyed today's video and you don't currently subscribe, please click the subscribe button, ring the notification bell, and that way you'll find out whenever I drop a new video. Follow me on all my social media platforms, all under Ali Taylor Golf. Hopefully catch up with some of you guys down here soon. Stay in contact.